Big time fight at bantamweight. We have the UFC debut of Jesse Strader taking on Montel Quick Jackson. And Matt, I love this fight because fight fans, you might be familiar with Jesse Strader. And if you're a Fight Night Picks fan, I talked about him quite a bit last week because he fought Marcelo Rojo over with Combate. And it was one of the most insane rounds that you've ever seen in all of MMA. And it embodies Jesse Strader's style to a T. He's a guy that's always moving forward. And for Jesse Strader, that's every single fight. The guy pushes an insane work rate. He has very, very quick hands and a lot of power in his hands. So if you're a fight fan, you've probably seen him with Combate. You can find the clips on YouTube. You know how good of a boxer he can be. If you're a pop music fan or a TMZ fan, you might know that he's training Aaron Carter. He is his boxing coach and manager to fight Lamar Odom.
Former sixth man of the year?
That's absolutely insane, and Fool's Gold is an underrated track. But I look at this, Matt, and Jesse Strader, primary striker. He wrestled when he was in high school. You can see a little bit of a base in that one. Kind of worry about him when he gets up against the cage, but again, primary boxer. He rips it to the body too. He throws a lot of really nice hooks, not just in that Marcelo Rojo fight, but if you go out and you watch a lot of the other performances that he's had, it's a lot of quick finishes too. You like to see all of that from Jesse Strader, a guy who was just anticipating the UFC call, and he gets this fight on about 10 days' notice, taking on Quick Montel Jackson, a guy who, listen, UFC debut, he lost to Ricky Simon. Halfway competitive fight. Then he beats Brian Kelleher in one of the craziest finishes. It was an early submission. Great one there. Beats Andre Sukumtov. Beats Felipe Colares. Loses to Bellator's own Brett Johns his last time out. His only fight in 2020. But for Montel Jackson at Pura Vida BJJ, you know exactly what you're going to get. One of the biggest guys in the bantamweight division. Huge.
He really is. And he's a guy who is going to use his physical strength to really incorporate his wrestling. And the Brett Johns fight, we did not see the best version of Montel Jackson. And that's what kind of worries me in this fight. He hasn't been the most active in the last couple of years. And it does concern me how much that will play an effect. Because, you go back to the Brian Kelleher win. That win was like 3 years ago. It's not like that win was only 6 months ago. It was a while. And again, you kind of think, wow, it's this new kind of up-and-comer in Montel Jackson. He's almost 30. Like, he's a guy who does kind of have to get going at some point. Because I do think there's a spot in the top 15 for him. Now, when I say that about fighters, they tend to get brutally knocked out. So I'm just going to stop saying that about fighters from here on out. But Montel Jackson is a tough fighter to beat with a full training camp. And I'm going to go back to what I said about another Combate veteran, if you will, last weekend. Marcelo Rojo. It's tough to beat a guy like Charles Jourdain with a full training camp, much less on short notice. I think Jesse Strader is a very good fighter. I think he's a very entertaining fighter. And I think he's a guy who, no matter what, no matter who he's up against, he's going to fight to the level of his competition. And sometimes he's going to go in there and look really good against guys who you think are borderline ranked. And sometimes he's going to look bad against guys you don't even think belong. Like, he could probably lose to Andre Sukumtov and knock out Jonathan Martinez. My point is, this is a very hard fight for him to make his UFC debut. And Montel Jackson, you look at what he does well. He's going to wrestle you. He's going to really incorporate jiu-jitsu and his very heavy top pressure. That's going to be tough for Strader to deal with. Like you had mentioned, Strader doesn't deal well with his back up against the cage. He reminds me a little bit of Kelvin Gastelum. And I use Gastelum as an example because it's more him with the striking defense. When he gets behind those two black lines and gets his back towards the fence, he becomes a different fighter defensively, and he doesn't move the same way. Strader does have that similarity to Gastelum. Again, I'm not really putting him to having the same ceiling as someone like Kelvin Gastelum, but if Jackson can back him up and get him up against the cage, we're just going to see one of those classic, I'm going to take you down, you're going to get pretty much back up to your feet, and I'm just going to take you down again. I think for Montel Jackson to win this fight, he has to make it boring, and it always sucks to say that, but it really is his key to victory in this one.
For Jesse Strader, you look at the overall record again, and he doesn't want you to, but 5-1 so far with the loss to Marcelo Rojo. Listen, Marcelo got finished by Charles Jourdain. That deserved $50K. I know Dana decided to give out 4 performance bonuses and not a fight of the night. That one definitely deserved a bonus. Both guys put on an absolute show, and Marcelo wore it on his eyes. But really, if you go back and watch the fight against Strader, they go at it almost to the end of the first round. Marcelo ends up getting the finish, but you look outside of that. Roberto Hernandez, 0-0. Christian Garcia, 3-4. Jose Aguayo, 2-1. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, 1-3. And then Isaiah Batten Gonzalez, back in August of 2019, 4-0. Now listen, if you listen to the interviews from Jesse Strader, he had fights lined up in the interim. Most of them fell through, and all of 2020 was a bit of a wash. He's been training And he's been training Aaron Carter, so there's that. But coming into a fight against Montel Jackson, that's no easy task for anyone, really, in this division.
Did you ever think training Aaron Carter would be an X factor to bring up in one of these videos? Because I definitely didn't.
I mean, maybe this fight's going to be Aaron's party, but I doubt it. Somebody's going to want candy.
He could be like Machine Gun Kelly with Stipe and like just be his hype man out to the cage. Montel Jackson's going to beat Jesse Strader. I really think he will. He's going to grapple him. He's a much more experienced fighter. He's been in there with the better guys. And again, with Strader, it is a little disturbing when you do a deep dive on his level of competition. He's never been in there with anyone close to the style of Montel Jackson, who's at this level of a grappler. I won't say he's never been in there with someone at his level, because Rojo is a very good fighter, but the grappling of Jackson's really going to be tough for Strader to deal with.
Could Jesse Strader knock out Montel Jackson? 110% he
Oh,
could.
yeah. It happened.
He could go in there, throw a nice combination to the body, toss a hook up top, and knock him out completely. And I would not be surprised in the least. And I know I'll say that from week to week, but seriously, Jesse Strader's a huge underdog. Jackson opened a -500 favorite. He's now -636 on best fight odds. For Jesse Strader, open +385. He's now +447. And out of the total votes on Tapology, there's about 670 of them. 93% Jackson, 49% by decision, 39% by knockout. Listen, Strader's got a shot. I know he's, only had 6 pro fights, but the guy's got a shot. I'm not taking him in this fight. But I'm telling you he has one, because for Montel Jackson, the grappling's there. The striking is there. He really has a lot of that package. If he can just figure out the distance management against a guy like Strader and doesn't have the problem that, say, an Andre Ewell has in this division, Montel Jackson should be able to pick up a pretty decent win. And it's a shame for him, too, because he has been out for about 7 months and change since his last fight against Brett Johns. So, both of us going with Pura Vida BJJ's Montel Jackson, but overall, really looking forward to this fight. It should be a better one than maybe those odds would suggest. So you want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, man, as we always say. Let's get into it.